Hey there everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm just going to do a quick time check, 5:18. So, I thought I'd talk a little bit off the cuff about my experiences buying video games, most particularly retro video games, here in Japan. As I'm sure most regular viewers of the channel know, I've lived here since March of 2020, so about 16 months or thereabout, and I've got a few experience of it. So I'm not a totally hardcore retro gamer that, spends all of their money on, games and so forth, but it's certainly definitely one of my passions. And so I've been able to sort of compare it with perhaps some of my experiences with purchasing older video games, retro video games back in the UK, which is where I'm from, and compare that with my experiences so far in Japan. So first of all, I'm just going to show you some of the kind of shops that I have. Not quite in my exact area where I live in, but certainly about an hour and a half or so's drive from where I live, in a city called Morioka, which is in Iwate prefecture. I do live in Iwate. I live in Miyako City on the coast, but apart from one store, there is basically nothing here in terms of being able to purchase retro video games. So let's go and take a look at some of the places that are in Morioka. So from that, I actually did purchase a couple of games. I picked up a copy of Artanelico, the very first one, which I've not yet played in English. I actually do own it back in the UK, but I've never got around to playing it, so maybe it'd be quite good for my Japanese practice. Or maybe it's a terrible idea, but it was really cheap at 330 yen with the tax. And also, I picked out Burnout 3, so which is for the PS2, which I've never played, but everybody raves on about it being a really good game. So looking forward to playing that. So yeah, so and Burnout 3 was 500 yen. So I have lost track of the conversions and so forth, but I believe roughly speaking, 500 yen is probably in the region of about maybe £3.50, £4, something like that. Actually, I should check this. Let's do this properly. Siri, how much is 500 yen in British pounds? £3.29. Oh, I wasn't far off then. Maybe just slightly over-egged the pudding. So yeah, pretty cheap, all things considered. Anyway, so let's start from the very beginning when I first arrived here in Japan. That was March of 2020. Some of the places that I went to in my first week, which was spent in Tokyo, I went to a hard-off store that was in one of the suburbs, or one of the not central wards, but one of the special wards of Tokyo called Nerima. And I went to a hard-off store there, and yeah, it was really good. They had plenty of Super Famicom. I didn't really look too much at anything else at the time, because that was all I was really interested in at that particular point in time. And so basically I picked up a copy of Secret of Mana here, nicely boxed, obviously complete, in really good condition, and amazingly the battery still works, so that's a bit of a bonus, but I can easily replace that if necessary. And I think I paid about 800 yen for this fully boxed, and they had tons of copies. So there was no need to overpay for things. I also picked up a couple of other Super Famicom games in there. I think Puyo Puyo, and well, maybe that was it. I can't remember exactly now, but it wasn't overly expensive for boxed games even. So and then from there I also went to Akihabara a couple of days later, which is obviously well known across the world as being sort of Japan's central sort of otaku sort of hub, shall we say. So if you love manga, anime, video gaming and so forth, you know, most people will come to Japan and visit Akiba at some point. Now, as with anything that is well known and got a reputation like Akiba has, you're going to be paying over the odds for what you find there. There are a couple of stores which are, I'd say, I wouldn't go as far as saying fairly priced, but they're not unreasonable. So it definitely pays to shop around. I think it's well worth going for the experience. You know, it would be a bit silly to not go and visit places like, for example, Super Potato, and enjoy, obviously, just the sheer amount of retro gaming goodness that's there. It's really an experience, and one that when Corona is over with, I'm really looking forward to going back to Tokyo. And yeah, I'm probably going to buy nothing in Super Potato, but I'm going to enjoy looking around those stores and maybe going to a few that weren't actually open when I visited, because either it was not their trading day or they were closed because of the corona pandemic. So I'm looking forward to going back there, and I would definitely recommend it. But the bargains in Japan definitely are to be found in the stores like Hard Off, Book Off. There is another chain which you would have seen in the little clips called Second Street, which, you know, they're a bit hit and miss with what they've got, to be honest with you. Sometimes they have absolutely zero video gaming stuff. It doesn't seem to be their particular focus, but some of their stores have more electrical stuff. Like, for example, this front-loading Denon cassette deck I picked up in the local Second Street for 2,000 yen. So, and it's nothing, and it actually all works perfectly. So it has a little bit of a problem with the auto reverse, but at that price, it's all good. But yeah, there are some other stores, but of course, obviously, the other thing that you're going to find is the independents. Now, the magic phrase that you're probably going to want to type into Google if you're planning your trip to Japan whenever you're allowed to come, because obviously, at the moment, with the corona pandemic, that's not possible. But the thing that you want to look for on Google is Chuko. That's, well, I could give you the Romaji, it's Chuuko. That means second hand, but basically I'll put it up on the video. But you want to type in Chuko Game, and wherever you're going to be staying or visiting, so whether it might be Kyoto, Osaka, Sendai, whatever kind of thing, and you will be able to perhaps find some links to stores which you won't find through using English, for example, although it has to be said Google is pretty good these days on that front. So yeah, so that's going to be your magic phrase to type into Google. It's well worth doing, because even if you might not be able to understand the website, you will at least get a map where you can go and visit somewhere. And you never know, you may find some bargains like I have over my time in Japan. After Tokyo, I then went up to Sendai, which is in Miyagi prefecture in the northeast of Japan. So that's the Tohoku region, which literally does mean northeast. So it's more sparsely populated up here. Sendai is a big city. Population is roughly about 1 million people. So there are plenty of places that you can go and visit there to look for games and so forth, and retro video games. And so it was there I actually bought my Super Famicom. And I bought it fully boxed, 2 controllers. It's a little bit yellowed, as you can see, but everything else about it was pristine for 5,500 yen. So that was a pretty good price. And it was also in Sendai that I picked up this copy of Lanma Chogi Rambuhen. It's basically pretty much the best Lanma 1/2 fighter. So this is a bit like Street Fighter 2, that kind of idea. And basically this obviously was fully boxed. It had the manual, all the inserts, everything complete. And I paid 300 yen for this. So as we've just found out, that was around about, let's say, £2. The self-same game, cartridge only and Super Potato, was 2,000 yen. God, I'm glad I didn't pick it up. So, just goes to show, don't buy the very first copy of the game that you see when you come to Japan. So that was in hard-off, as I say, so not a particularly esoteric store. And you'll find hard-offs all over Japan, as well as book-offs and so forth. Varying degrees of what they hold in stock and so forth. I've been to some hard-offs which have been literally treasure troves, likewise with book-offs, and some which have had barely anything. So it's a bit hit and miss at times. I've yet to see anything that I would consider to be like, wow, kind of thing. I think the only thing that I did see that was a little bit special was I don't really fully understand what it is, but there's like a particular type of PlayStation 2, which I think is actually called the PSX, not to be confused with this kind of PSX. And I think it's something to do with it being like a PVR or whatever they were called. And whether it was functioning, I would guess not, but it was dirt cheap, and I've since found out they're quite rare, but I personally have no use for it, so why am I going to pick up something just based on its rarity if I'm never going to use it? That's probably why I'm not very well off. But anyway, so shopping around really makes sense in Japan, because you're going to find lots of stores, even like independents and so forth, which are charging quite a lot for a game. Not because it's not worth it, but because they can actually get that kind of money for it. So here's another good example. This is Street Racer, as you can see, for the Super Famicom, fully boxed again, you know, the box is not perfect, but it's good enough for me, kind of thing. And I picked this up in a book-off in Sendai in August of last year or thereabouts, and I paid 800 yen for this. So not a particularly great deal of money again. You can get this game on PlayStation, which I actually do own back in the UK. I think it's on the Saturn. I think you can get it on the Mega Drive. It came out for most platforms. It even came out for the Amiga in its latter days, but I don't think that's a very good port, to be honest with you. I think the controls in it are blooming awful, but on the Super Famicom it's fantastic. But in probably the very best second-hand store in the area that I live in Iwate prefecture, up in Tohoku, the northeast of Japan, is a store called Yorozuya in Morioka. Now, they have a number of branches. They have a branch in Hachinohe, and I think they also have a branch in, or maybe 2 branches in Aomori City. There may be others that I've forgotten, but the one that I mostly go to is the one in Morioka City. And they have this very game at the moment, well, they did as of last week, for I think about 4,000 yen, so it pays to shop around. So if you don't desperately have to play the game there and then, take your time. You will find other stores that have it. Now, obviously, I've had the luxury of actually living in Japan, so I've not really felt that I've got to do it all within 2 weeks in my trip to Japan, otherwise that's it, kind of thing. It's game over. Please pay again. But or insert coin. But the thing is it does pay to shop around a little bit. You will find bargains. possibly the very best bargain, which I don't have to hand, but I'll put a link to the relevant video. But my best bargain in Japan has been finding a unboxed copy of Axelay. Now, unboxed is not a big deal for me, really, to be honest with you, unless it's something that is at the right price or has got a particular sentimental value to me or something like that. I'm quite okay buying loose Super Famicom games and so forth. And the best deal that I got on Axelay was finding that for 100 yen in Book Off in Morioka. Absolutely unbelievable bargain, because I regularly see copies of that game unboxed for in the region of 7,500 to 8,000 yen unboxed. Crazy, huh? So it just goes to show shopping around really does pay off, and you do have to do a lot of digging, so be prepared to do some digging. You will find in book offs and hard offs and so forth, literally these like those big plastic tubs which you can store stuff in. They will just literally be in there, and you will just have to dig through. And yes, certainly the vast majority of what you're going to see in there is going to be Winning Post, Prime Goal, that Namco baseball game of the name I can't think of, that kind of crap, basically. You're going to find tons of that, but occasionally you will find absolute gems for a good price. Some book offs and hard offs will have junk sections, particularly hard offs. I don't think book off does have a junk section, but they will have a junk section, which is where most of your prime goals and all that rubbish will be. Still worth digging through if you've got the time, and you'll also find perhaps less pristine copies of decent games in there, so things like Bomberman and so forth. So if you don't mind your little yellowed cartridge and that, if you're mostly interested in I just want the game, definitely dig through the junk sections, because you'll often find plenty of really decent games for very little money indeed. And then you might find in the main sort of sale area where stuff is not considered junk, in hard off, for example, or in book off, you'll find that the games are actually shrink wrapped, which is sometimes a bit of a pain when it comes to things like PlayStation games or Saturn games, or things where you want to check what the condition of the disc is, or whether there's a manual included. You might actually have to approach one of the sales assistants at Tainin, as it's called, and ask them, can I see what it's like? Maybe you can say something like, "Kono game wa naka ni misete kudasai." My Japanese is not perfect. I'm not pretending that it is. I've only been here for 16 months, and I came up completely zen. That's nothing level, and I'm still very much learning every single day. But you can certainly take the game to one of the Tainin, one of the assistants, and just very politely say, "Sumimasen, misete kudasai," and that literally means, "Excuse me, please show it to me," kind of thing. So the nakani bit is the inside. I think, generally speaking, the Tainin, the assistants will understand what you mean. Like if you point to sort of like the interior, as it were, if you say "misete kudasai," they'll understand. So there's something that you can do if you find that the shrink wrap games you can't actually see what's included in it. The only thing is that some of them actually seal them up almost like they're brand new games. So they might be a bit like, well, but they might be able to tell you what's inside of it, so and explain that kind of thing to you. So that's book offs and so forth and hard offs. The other thing that you may find with regards to any chuko at the second-hand store again, or whether it's hard off or book off, is that they will have display cabinets with particularly valuable or rare items, or stuff that is just generally in really good condition. Or sometimes it's because they've literally got worthless crap in the rest of the store, and the fact that they've got a copy of Super Mario Kart, they're like, well, we better show it, kind of thing. It's better than nothing. But of course the only problem with that is that sometimes you will find that the games are piled up so much you can't actually see what they've got, or that again you want to actually look at an item or purchase an item that's in the display cabinet but you don't know what to say. So you basically want to say something like, "Sumimasen, asoko wa Super Famicom game ga aru, soshite misete kudasai." So you'd be able to basically say something like, over there is some Super Famicom games, please show me, kind of thing. So, or, if it's in a display cabinet, you can say, Asoko wa tansu no naka ni sore wa Super Famicom game ga hoshi desu. So basically, over there in a display cabinet, there's a Super Famicom game that I want. Yokata. Okay, so apologies for anybody who is much more proficient at Japanese than I am, but I'm still very much a student of the language. So, but I generally find that nobody has ever seen me as being rude through the way that I've approached the language. The key thing is basically saying kudasai. If you literally say misete, it can sound a bit rude because you're basically forgetting the please. So, or you can say onegai shimasu. You can say misete onegai shimasu, which is even more polite. So they'll understand. I mean, let's face it, unless you have perhaps some Japanese descent in your family or something like that, you're going to look like a foreigner. I mean, basically, there is no way in hell that I'm going to basically look Japanese. So I think, generally speaking, most Teinin-san will basically appreciate the fact that you're trying. But of course, obviously, you can use gestures, but for goodness sake, please don't be that terrible gaijin that basically just stands there going, over there, and shouts at the Teinin-san. So it's just, yeah. Let's try and spread a good reputation of ourselves, kind of thing. Anyway, apart from the Japanese language lesson, I want to also show you another thing that's a little bit strange. Now, one of the things that I found a little bit unusual is that it's the games that so I come obviously from the UK, and when it comes to Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, there were a ton of games that we just did not get in that region. So a good example would be all of the JRPGs. There were precious few that actually got properly converted over to the PAL territories. So one of those games does actually happen to be Secret of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 2, as it's Seiken Densetsu Ni, as it is in Japan. But yeah, this was one of the few games we did get. But things like Chrono Trigger, Bahamut Lagoon, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy IV. They did. Bahamut Lagoon, I don't think came out in the States, but or Canada, but certainly games like Chrono Trigger and the Final Fantasies that did not ever get official PAL releases. So you're going to find those games in an abundance here in Japan, obviously with the caveat that they're going to be entirely in Japanese. But some of the games that you'll find a little bit more difficult to find will be games that are very Western. So things like Street Racer. And games also like another one that's just popped into my head is Lemmings. Not an overly cheap game to find in Japan, but a really good Super Famicom or Super Nintendo as well version of the game. The Amiga version is the best one, but the Super Famicom game is no slouch. But yeah, this was not a cheap game to buy because it just so happens that it tends to be that Western games are just a little bit less prevalent, shall we say, in Japan. And another good example of that, if we're going to stray into PlayStation and so forth, and slightly more, for sort of 32-bit systems, would be games like, for example, a couple of my favourites, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series. So, yeah, copies of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, you can pick these up dime a dozen, in the UK, and I'm sure in many other countries like the States and Canada and France or whatever. But basically, over here, I don't think I've ever seen a copy of this actually in a store. Whether that's in one of the cabinets, whether it's on the shelves, whatever. I've never seen this. And in fact, I've never seen Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, 2003, as it is in Japan here either. So, and these tend to be quite expensive if you do see them. I did see a copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which I do want to pick up at some point for the PS2, but it was really expensive. And I think I paid about 1,500 yen for this copy of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, but it did at least come with the obi, which is like the little bit that would have been around the spine. Some people do call it a spine card. The spine card of the... anyway, I'm waffling. But basically, yeah, it wasn't a bad price, and it was in completely mint condition. But yeah, so you will find that some Western games are ironically a bit more expensive here. But I guess if you're coming on a vacation and you're only here for 2 weeks, the chances are that if you're looking to buy Western games, you're not going to do that in Japan. You're going to be coming for the stuff that's Japan exclusive, or the games that were popular both in the West and Japan and so forth, but are really expensive in your own country. So good examples of that would be even quite commonplace games these days. I mean, I've seen, good condition copies of Mario Kart for, going for like 20 quid or something like that, maybe more these days for the Super Nintendo. So you can easily pick up a nice box copy of that in Japan for like 8 quid. So, yeah, that you probably wouldn't be looking to buy those games here. The reason I've got them is because obviously my copies of those games are back in the UK, which is a fat lot of good to me here. So, I've talked about the games and so forth, and maybe some of the things that you want to sort of look out for. But the key message is look around, use the magic phrases in Google so you can perhaps find some of the smaller independent stores, because I have truly found some amazing bargains in there. There are some really small places out in the Inaka, which is the countryside that I live in, that have very low population, but do have second-hand stores, Juko, independents. They sell manga, anime, they sell figurines, basically anything that you would associate with like otaku culture. And you will find in some of those stores they have an absolute treasure trove of games that literally nobody even knows that it's there, kind of thing. And I've picked up like, for example, games for the Saturn and so forth for like 300 yen. Like the games that you just will not find for that kind of money anywhere else, kind of thing. I guess they had just been sat on the shelf for so long that the price had been applied to that game probably like 10 years ago, and because nobody has looked at those games since, they've not reevaluated the prices. So anyway, so next thing I want to talk about is the actual systems themselves. Now, I briefly mentioned about the Super Famicom. I picked that up boxed for 5,500 yen. Not a great deal of money, fully boxed. But you will find that some systems are not actually all that cheap here. In fact, I can only really think of one system that I would say is generally quite cheap in Japan, and I would say that that is the GameCube. I think the GameCube was a lot more popular here in Japan than it was perhaps in Europe. I know it had a bit of a following, but it was all about the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation at that point in time, I believe. Well, that's the way I saw it, because I was a PS2 owner at the time when the GameCube was out. I thought it was a great machine, but didn't really particularly interest me to buy one, kind of thing, at the time. That's why I had the PS2. But I've generally found that other systems, such as the PS2, and what other systems can I include in that? The N64 to some extent, PS3, although that is a bit more modern and so forth, not overly cheap in Japan, particularly the PS2. If you want to pick up a good working order PS2, you can be looking at maybe 7,000 to 8,000 yen. Which seems really expensive to me, and you will see in junk sections of hard-off PS2s in abundance for like 2,000 yen, but I can almost guarantee that a lot of them are going to have problems reading discs, particularly the slim models. There'll be models that might scratch the disc, but you might get lucky. You might be able to just sort of slightly tape down the ribbon cable that often goes wrong on some of the early model PS2 Slims, and that might get a bit more life out of it. But that seems really expensive to me. I mean, maybe the price of PS2s has risen, say, for example, in the UK. But not so long ago, I picked up a PS2, maybe 2 or 3 years ago in the UK. That was completely region-free, new laser, the whole shebang, really good condition. Had the controller and the power adapter. It wasn't one of the models with a built-in power supply, and that was like 30 quid. And so I think PS2s are quite expensive here. The other system that is quite cheap here is the original PlayStation. So I picked this up in Akita City around about this time last year, actually. It's in really good condition. It's one of the models that still has a parallel port, so just in case I ever get a device that allows me to load games from means other than the CD. Unfortunately, this one, like most PlayStation ones, has problem reading discs. But I paid a grand sum of 300 yen for this, so as we found out earlier, about £2.50, which is absolutely nothing. And I do actually have a new laser, module coming from AliExpress, hopefully soon, because there is just something about the pair of some games that just basically whilst I can play THPS2 on the PS2, absolutely fine, works a treat kind of thing. There is something about this combination, it's just magic. You know, playing on an original PlayStation with PS2 DualShock, PSX DualShock controller, and just this game just brings back so many really good memories of basically flunking or my exams and just not putting enough work into coursework whilst I was in my late teens, studying for my A levels and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure that is such a good memory personally. Well, it's a good memory to me, but perhaps for the wrong reasons. But hey ho. Life is what happens to you whilst you're busy making other plans. But yeah, so to pick up other consoles, I think the thing that you're going to probably find worth the money is the stuff that we didn't get in certain countries. So, for example, my experience from the UK, systems that we didn't get officially were things like the PC Engine. You're looking at around about maybe 10,000 yen, that's Ichimanen, for basically a original PC Engine with a controller and the RF adapter for what that's worth kind of thing, and the power supply. So that's not too bad, I guess. And they're generally in quite good condition as well. They're not all yellowed and horrible. I don't think I've ever seen a core graphics or the original PC Engine in Hardware Junk section. Never seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, never seen one. You will find others things here like Turbo Duos and or whatever they were called over here. I'm not 100% on the names of everything, but you know what I mean, like the combined PC Engine, CD-ROM, PC Engine Duo, that's the kiddie, isn't it? So you will see those over here, but I've generally not got them because I've got the original PC Engine with the Terra Onion SD system free. So they do exist here, but obviously, as with a lot of early 90s electronics, you're probably going to be looking at having to get the caps replaced on it. Not sure the prices, but they're generally quite expensive. You're probably looking at Nimanen, so that's 20,000 yen and up on those kind of systems. I have seen PC Engine shuttles from time to time. Why the hell you'd want one of those apart from if you're a collector? I don't know. But yeah, they do exist, and they're expensive. And you will find things like Game Boy Lights, for example. That's like the Game Boy Pocket, but with the is it a backlight or a front light on those? I can't remember, but it's got a light on it, hasn't it? So which makes the games much more enjoyable to play. But again, you're not looking at particularly cheap prices for those. So yeah, it's a bit hit and miss on the systems, if I'm honest. You will often find plenty of the original PlayStations, tons of Wiis. Tons of original Famicoms and so forth in the junk sections of Hard Off, but I would probably err on the side of caution, unless it's a Super Famicom where the chances are if you clean up the contacts inside the machine, it's probably absolutely fine. I would probably err on the side of caution when it comes to the PS2s and other stuff that you see there, unless you've got repair skills, of which I don't have. The last thing I just want to mention, which I've just thought of actually, with regards to prices of games in general, I would say that definitely the prices overall on games is pretty cheap here in Japan. You will find PlayStation, Super Famicom, Saturn to a degree of its popular games, PlayStation again, PS2, PS3, DS. The games are actually pretty well priced, that kind of stuff. The systems where I think the games are actually still quite pricey are things like the PC Engine, particularly Hue cards. You will often find a PC Engine, Super CD-ROM, ROM, whatever it is, games that aren't overly expensive here, but obviously you need a CD-ROM attachment, CD-ROM attachment. But I don't think PC Engine is particularly cheap here. And the other thing that is definitely not cheap here compared to the UK and North America and perhaps a lot of European countries is Mega Drive. That is really expensive here, both the consoles and the games. You know, you could say that, and I would agree with it, the box art and things like Sonic is much better in Japan, but it's a lot more expensive. So I've not picked up a Mega Drive here in Japan, or Sega Genesis as it was in North America. So yeah, and some of the other systems you would occasionally see are things like MSX, but I don't personally have any interest in MSX, so I can't really comment on that. So yeah, overall, yeah, I've managed to pick up the Super Famicom, the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn I bought boxed from Yahoo auctions for literally, I think I paid box for the Sega Saturn with 2 controllers. Again, the top is just slightly yellowed, but I paid 2,000 yen for that. There's nothing, is it? So, and I thought that was a pretty good price. Actually, it might be worth me just mentioning about Yahoo auctions. So, if you come to Japan on a vacation, yeah, you probably could use Yahoo auctions whilst you're here. You will have to sign up completely in Japanese. But the way that you would do that is that you would have to give the address of where you're staying. So if you're staying in a hotel, that might not be so great. But if you're staying in an apartment, as long as you know the address, you can insert that. You will have to be able to put it in Japanese. So you will need to have some comprehension of how to type that in. But you could certainly do that. I don't recall having to put any proof of residence in. I don't remember having to put my Zyrio, that's my residence card's ID into it. I'm not sure that I did it. It was over a year ago I did this now, so I could be talking out of my hat. But certainly it isn't. I'm pretty certain it's an option. And then you can pay for your auctions either by using, obviously, your credit card, or you can pay for them at a convenience store, a konbini, and you just basically take the reference number that you get, take that to the machine and put that in, and you can pay at the konbini regi at the register. So that's a possibility. Prices on Yahoo auctions are generally pretty competitive, but there are a lot of overpriced stuff, just like eBay in that regard. You'll have people that are just auctioning stuff, and you might get a good bargain, and you'll get stuff that people are obviously just trying to get top whack for stuff. So again, don't overpay. And also, something surprisingly good in Japan for second-hand retro games is Amazon. Now, I try to steer clear of Amazon where possible, just personally my own ethical point of view, shall we say. I'm not saying that you have to share that, although I have to say in Japan it has been at times somewhat necessary for me to purchase things from Amazon, because I live an hour and a half from my nearest big city, and not everything that I need is in Miyako, unfortunately, if only it were. And to be honest with you, because I can pay easily for items at the convenience store with cash, for stuff that I've purchased on Amazon, because I don't have a Japanese credit card, that actually has been necessary. But you will find that Amazon Japan actually does, actually have a reasonably good range of games that aren't overly priced and are in pretty good condition. So a good example of that would be Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which was in good condition. And also, actually, this is a good example of something that I picked up on Yahoo auctions. This is Ghost in the Shell, which was only released, I believe, in Japan and in PAL territories. I don't believe this came out in North America. This is for the PlayStation. And really good game. Quite expensive, certainly in the UK. But I picked this up on Yahoo auctions for 800 yen. So, well worth it. So I think that pretty much wraps up this video. A little bit of a ramble. I'm sure it's a bit long, but there are some key phrases that you can use. I mean, your real sort of killer phrases, if you're not sure about how you're going to remember all of it, is going to be sumimasen, excuse me, misete kudasai, please show me. Particularly if you have the item in your hands, like for example, if it is a PS2 game that you want to look inside, but it's got the cellophane and you're a bit embarrassed about taking it out in the store and that. So misete kudasai literally means please show me, or you can say misete onegai shimasu. Onegai shimasu is like a really polite form of please, and you can also use onegai shimasu by itself. So if they will say something like rejibuko ga arimasu ka, which means do you want a bag, you can say onegai shimasu, which means please, yes. So sorry, I probably overcomplicated that again, but so sumimasen, misete kudasai, and onegai shimasu. And of course, obviously, the one that everybody knows, obviously, arigatou gozaimasu. And when the transaction is finished, you can say arigatou gozaimashita, which means thank you for what you have done. So, and they'll think that you're totally fluent in Japanese, and you'll get what I got last year, which was honto jouzu ni da no, and I'm like, I really am not. Literally, I can say konnichiwa and thank you. I have literally no idea what you've said to me in this whole transaction. Welcome to my life in Japan. Anyway, wow, I think I've talked for almost 40 minutes. that's the end of the video, folks. I hope you found some of that useful. I hope you can come and visit Japan soon when this awful pandemic is over. It's been totemo taihen desu ne. It's been a real pain, hasn't it? Taihen being hard work, I guess. Yes, or if you want to go super strong, you can say mendokusai, pain in the bum. So I hope you can come to Japan and enjoy your trip here soon, and obviously enjoy some of the video gaming and retro gaming that you can enjoy here. So anyway, that's about it from me. I hope you found that useful, and I guess that all remains for me to say is sorry for waffling, and see you soon. Peace.